The morning sun rose slowly over the wheat fields of Haven Colony, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Tommy stood at his bedroom window, watching the farming robots move through the golden crops like careful dancers. At 10 years old, he was already known throughout the small colony as the boy who never stopped asking questions. "Tommy, breakfast is ready," his mother called from downstairs. The smell of fresh bread and synthetic eggs filled the house, a normal morning in their peaceful corner of space. The colony of Haven sat on a planet 30 light-years from Earth. It was home to 5,000 people, most of them farmers and engineers who worked together to build humanity's future among the stars. Tommy's parents were both colony engineers. His father worked on the communication systems, and his mother maintained the environmental controls that kept everyone safe and comfortable. As Tommy ate his breakfast, he watched his father frown at his datapad. "Something wrong, Dad?" he asked, mouthful of bread. "Just some strange readings from the upper atmosphere," his father replied, adjusting his glasses. "Probably just solar interference." But Tommy noticed how his father's fingers tapped nervously on the table, something they only did when he was worried. Later that day, Tommy sat in his favorite spot, the old observation tower at the edge of the colony. The tower wasn't used much anymore, not since they'd built the new one, but it had the best view of both the colony and the stars above. He'd brought his father's old radio, a hobby device that could pick up all sorts of signals from space. The radio crackled with its usual static when something unusual caught Tommy's attention. Between the normal beeps and whistles of space noise, he heard a pattern he'd never noticed before. It sounded almost like music, but not quite. More like the way birds might sing if birds were made of metal. Looking up at the sky, Tommy noticed something else strange. The usual blue of Haven's atmosphere seemed different, with odd flickers of light that reminded him of the northern lights he'd seen in videos from Earth. But Haven wasn't supposed to have northern lights. Tommy grabbed his datapad and started recording everything he saw and heard. His teacher always said that good scientists keep detailed notes, and Tommy wanted to be the best scientist in the colony when he grew up. He drew pictures of the lights and wrote down descriptions of the sounds, making sure to note the time and date of each observation. As the sun began to set, more people started to notice the strange lights. Tommy saw groups of adults pointing at the sky and talking in hushed voices. The colony's warning system remained quiet, but there was a tension in the air that made even the youngest children walk a little faster on their way home. That evening, Tommy's parents sat him down for a serious talk. "We've detected some unusual activity in orbit," his mother explained, trying to keep her voice calm. "It's probably nothing to worry about, but we want you to keep your emergency bag packed and ready, just in case." Tommy nodded, but his mind was already racing with possibilities. He'd read about first contact scenarios in his books. Could this be it? Were they about to meet aliens? The thought should have scared him, but instead, he felt a surge of excitement. As he lay in bed that night, the strange sounds from his radio grew stronger. Through his window, the lights in the sky danced more intensely than before. Tommy pulled out his datapad and started a new entry, Day 1 of First Contact. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to become part of a story that would be told across human space for generations to come. In the quiet darkness of his room, Tommy made a decision. Whatever was happening, whatever came next, he would face it with courage and curiosity. After all, that's what humans did best. They faced the unknown with hope in their hearts and questions in their minds. Little did he know, his courage would soon be tested in ways he could never have imagined. The morning Haven sky turned silver was the day everything changed. Tommy woke up to the sound of emergency sirens echoing through the colony. Outside his window, massive ships hung in the air like metal clouds, their surfaces reflecting the morning sun with an almost painful brightness. "Tommy, get your emergency bag," his mother called, rushing into his room. Her usual calm voice had an edge of worry that made Tommy's heart beat faster. "We need to get to the community shelter." The colony's streets were filled with people looking up at the ships. Some were taking pictures, others were hurrying to the shelters, and a few just stood frozen in place. Tommy clutched his bag tightly as he followed his parents through the crowd. Suddenly, every screen and device in the colony came to life with the same message. The aliens' faces appeared everywhere. They looked like tall, thin creatures with silver skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle. Their message was simple but frightening. People of Haven Colony, we are the Stellar Empire. Your world is now under our protection. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. You have 1 hour to decide. Tommy watched as the colony's leader, Governor Wilson, tried to talk to the aliens. The old man stood in the colony's main square, his voice steady as he spoke into the emergency broadcast system. We are a peaceful farming colony. We mean you no harm, but we cannot simply surrender our home. Let us discuss this properly. The aliens' response came quickly and without mercy. Your time to decide has been shortened to 15 minutes. Your defiance shows dangerous primitive tendencies. Tommy's father was called to the emergency command center, where he worked frantically with other engineers to secure their communications. His mother joined the medical team, preparing for whatever might come next. Tommy was supposed to go to the children's shelter, but he had other plans. Instead of following the other kids, he slipped away to his secret hiding spot in the maintenance tunnels near the colony's power core. From there, he could see one of the landing zones where the alien ships were touching down. Their ships looked like giant silver needles standing on end. The alien soldiers that marched out were tall, at least 8 feet high, wearing armor that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. They carried strange weapons that hummed with energy, and they moved with a strange grace that made them look almost like they were floating. Tommy pulled out his father's old radio and discovered something incredible. He could hear the aliens talking to each other. Their words came through as a mix of musical sounds and clicks, but somehow he could understand them. Years of playing with the radio's controls had taught him more than anyone knew. These humans are so small, one alien voice said. How do they survive being so tiny and soft? Be careful, another replied. The reports say they're unpredictable. And this world is so dark compared to ours. How do they see anything? That's when Tommy noticed something interesting. The alien soldiers seemed to huddle closer together whenever they passed through shadows. They kept their lights on full power, even though it wasn't dark at all by human standards. The colony's defenders tried to fight back. Security forces with their magnetic pulse rifles took positions around the main buildings, but the aliens' weapons were too powerful, easily disabling the colony's defenses with beams of bright energy. As Tommy watched from his hiding place, he saw more and more alien troops landing, but he also saw how they jumped at shadows and stayed away from darker areas. A plan began to form in his mind, a plan that would need every bit of courage he could muster. Looking at his datapad, Tommy started making notes about everything he observed. The aliens were bigger, stronger, and had better weapons, but they were afraid of something so simple that every human child learned to deal with before they could walk: the dark. As the sounds of battle grew closer, Tommy smiled. Sometimes the biggest advantages could come from the strangest places, and he knew exactly how to use this one. Tommy crouched in the darkness of the maintenance tunnels, his father's radio held close to his chest. Above him, the sounds of alien troops marching through the colony's streets echoed through the metal walls. But down here, in the network of underground passages, he was safe, and he was learning. The radio crackled with alien chatter. After 2 hours of listening, Tommy had figured out that the aliens called themselves the Lightborn. Through their conversations, he learned something fascinating. Their home world orbited 3 suns, which meant they had never known true darkness until they started exploring space. Squad 7, report. An alien commander's voice came through the radio. Why haven't you secured the lower levels? Sir, came the shaky reply. The darkness down there. It's unnatural. Our light units aren't working properly in these human tunnels. Request permission to focus on upper levels only. Tommy smiled. He wasn't the only one who had noticed their weakness. The colony's storage network spread out like a spider web beneath the surface, and most of it ran on minimal lighting to save power. To Tommy, who had played hide-and-seek in these tunnels for years, it was as familiar as his own home. But to the aliens, it was a nightmare. Using his data pad, Tommy mapped out the alien patrol patterns he could hear through the radio. They were avoiding anything below ground level, sticking to well-lit areas, and always moving in groups of at least 4. Their powerful weapons and advanced armor meant nothing against their deep-rooted fear of shadows. As he moved through the tunnels, Tommy found other kids who had hidden instead of going to the shelters. Jack from his science class was hiding near the food storage, and the twins Amy and Andy were tucked away in the recycling center. None of them had realized how afraid the aliens were of the dark. "Look at this," Tommy whispered, showing them his data pad. He'd drawn a rough map of the colony, marking all the dark spots the aliens were avoiding. They're super strong and have amazing weapons, but they're terrified of shadows. It's like they're all afraid of the dark, just like little kids. "But we're not afraid of the dark," Annie said, her eyes lighting up with understanding. "Exactly," Tommy grinned, "and I think that's our advantage." He shared more of what he'd learned through the radio. The aliens had evolved under constant light, their eyes adapted to extreme brightness. Darkness wasn't just uncomfortable for them, it was completely foreign to their biology. Even their technology seemed to work less effectively in low light conditions. Through the radio, they heard more evidence of the aliens' fear. Soldiers reported movement in the shadows when nothing was there. Others claimed to hear strange noises in dark corners. Their fear was making them imagine threats that didn't exist. "We can use this," Tommy explained to his friends. "We know these tunnels better than anyone. We know where every dark corner is, every shadow, every place where the lights flicker. We can make them think that darkness is alive." The other children gathered around as Tommy outlined his plan. It was risky, but it might be their only chance to help the colony. They had what the aliens didn't expect: courage in the face of darkness, and the imagination to use that courage creatively. "Their biggest weapon is that they're bigger and stronger than us," Tommy said, his voice steady in the dim light of the tunnel. "But down here, in the dark, we're the strong ones. They don't understand darkness, but we do. We grew up with it. It's our friend." As if to emphasize his point, the power flickered, making the emergency lights dim momentarily. The children didn't even flinch, but above them, they could hear alien troops crying out in alarm. Tommy looked at his friends' faces, lit by the soft glow of their data pads. "We're going to teach them that humans aren't afraid of the dark. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough to save our home." Tommy led his small group through the dark tunnels beneath Haven Colony, moving as quietly as shadows. There were 6 of them now: Tommy, the twins Amy and Andy, Jack, and 2 more kids they'd found hiding in the storage areas, Mike and Lisa. Each carried a bag full of simple but clever tools they'd gathered from the maintenance sections. "Remember," Tommy whispered as they reached their first target area, "we don't need to fight them. We just need to scare them." Their plan started small. In Sector 3, where alien troops were setting up a command post, Andy placed a small motor from a cleaning robot near a ventilation shaft. When activated, it made a low, rumbling sound that echoed through the metal walls. Through his radio, Tommy heard the alien reactions immediately. "Command, we're detecting strange vibrations," one soldier reported, their musical voice trembling slightly. The shadows seemed to be moving. The children grinned at each other in the darkness. Phase 1 was working. In another area, Amy and Lisa used strings attached to maintenance panels, making them creak slowly in the darkness. The sound carried through the quiet halls, making the alien soldiers jump. Their powerful weapons were useless against noises they couldn't explain. Jack had the most creative idea. He took small mirrors from broken data pads and placed them at angles in dark corners. When the aliens' bright lights hit them, they created strange, moving reflections that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. The darkness is alive. One alien soldier screamed through the radio, just like the ancient stories of the Shadow Eaters. Tommy hadn't expected that. The aliens weren't just afraid of the dark. They had old stories about it, legends that made their fear even deeper. His simple plan was playing into fears that went back generations in their culture. Mike, who worked in the colony's farm section after school, knew all about the ventilation system. He showed the others how to adjust the airflow to make whistling sounds that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The alien soldiers began to bunch closer together, their lights blazing at full power. But the brighter their lights became, the darker the shadows they cast, and every shadow now seemed to hide a potential threat. Tommy coordinated everything through his datapad, marking where each trick was placed and timing them to create patterns that seemed intentional and threatening. The aliens' fear began to spread up their chain of command. 3 squads have reported shadow movement in Sector 7. An alien commander reported. 2 more in Sector 4. We cannot maintain proper patrol patterns if the troops refuse to enter darker sections. The children moved through the tunnels like they were playing the world's most important game of hide and seek. They knew every shortcut, every maintenance shaft, every quiet way to move from one section to another. The aliens, with their huge size and bright armor, could never follow them into the tight, dark spaces they used. Their tricks grew bolder. They started timing the power fluctuations to match their other effects. When the lights dimmed, the mysterious sounds would begin. When they brightened again, things had been moved, just slightly, just enough to make the aliens question their sanity. Through his radio, Tommy heard the alien commanders growing increasingly frustrated. Their troops were jumping at shadows, refusing to patrol alone, and reporting threats that their sensors couldn't confirm. "This is impossible," one commander said. "How can these humans control the darkness itself? Our intelligence said they were primitive." Tommy smiled in the darkness of the tunnel. They weren't controlling the darkness. They were just braver than the aliens could understand. Sometimes, he realized, being small could be an advantage. The aliens were so busy looking for big threats that they never considered that children might be their greatest enemy. The colony's main power station hummed quietly as Tommy and his friends prepared for their biggest trick yet. After 3 days of small scares and mysterious sounds, it was time to show the aliens something that would break their courage completely. "Are you sure about this?" Jack asked, looking at the master control panel. "If we get caught." "We won't," Tommy said firmly. "Look at the radio messages. They're already halfway to running away. They just need one big push." The children had spent hours practicing their timing. Amy and Andy were positioned near the backup generators. Mike and Lisa waited in the ventilation control room. Jack stood ready at the emergency lighting controls. And Tommy, monitoring everything through his father's radio, would give the signal. Above them, the alien army was already showing signs of breaking. Through the radio, Tommy heard countless reports of soldiers refusing to patrol darker areas. Some even claimed they'd seen shadows moving against the light itself, which made Tommy smile. They hadn't even done anything in those areas. "All units, maintain position," an alien commander shouted through the radio. "These are just tricks. The humans cannot possibly control darkness." That was the moment Tommy had been waiting for. He pressed the button on his datapad, sending a simple message to his friends. Now, the plan began with complete silence. Every ventilation fan in the colony slowly ground to a halt. The usual background hum of machinery faded away, leaving an eerie quiet that made even the children feel uncomfortable. Then the lights began to flicker, not randomly, but in a pattern that moved through the colony like a wave. Jack had practiced this for hours, learning exactly how to manipulate the emergency systems to create the effect of something huge moving through the darkness. Through his radio, Tommy heard the alien soldiers' panic rising. "The shadows. They're moving together. Look at the lights. Something's coming. Command, request immediate withdrawal from Sector 8. The next phase began as Amy and Andy activated their part of the plan. The backup generators kicked in with a deep, resonating hum that made the very walls vibrate. Mike and Lisa used the ventilation systems to create a howling sound that rose and fell like some enormous creature breathing. Tommy switched his radio to broadcast mode, something his father had taught him never to do, and played back a mix of alien panic messages he'd recorded over the past few days. The sound of their own troops crying out in fear echoed through their communication channels, creating even more confusion. The effect was more than they'd hoped for. Alien troops began breaking formation, their carefully organized units dissolving into chaos. Through the security cameras they'd managed to access, Tommy watched as the mighty warriors of the Stellar Empire backed away from shadows cast by their own lights. Full retreat. The order finally came from the alien command. Some kind of shadow weapon. The humans have weaponized darkness itself. Tommy couldn't help but laugh. They hadn't weaponized anything. They'd just shown the aliens their own fears. Sometimes the scariest things were the ones that existed in your own mind. The children watched through the cameras as alien soldiers scrambled back to their ships, their perfect formations forgotten. Some even dropped their weapons, too panicked to remember their training. The mighty army that had seemed unstoppable just days ago was running from shadows and sounds. "I can't believe it worked," Lisa whispered, watching the aliens flee. "Of course it worked," Tommy replied. "They thought being big and strong made them better than us. But they forgot that being brave isn't about size. It's about facing your fears. And we learned to face the dark a long time ago." Through his radio, Tommy heard the alien commander give one final order. "All units, emergency evacuation. The humans are more powerful than we thought. They don't fear the darkness. They command it." The colony's defenders watched in amazement as the alien army retreated in chaos. Mighty warriors who had seemed invincible just days ago were now running from their own shadows, their formation completely broken. Through the colony's main viewing window, Tommy and his friends could see the silver ships lifting off in a hurry, some of them nearly crashing into each other in their rush to escape. What in the world did this? Colonel Peters, the head of colony security, asked nobody in particular. He stood in the command center, watching the sensor displays show more and more alien ships breaking orbit. Tommy's father, who had been working nonstop at the communications console, suddenly straightened up in his chair. "Sir, you need to hear this," he said, putting the alien communications on the main speaker. "Full retreat confirmed. Haven Colony is protected by shadow warriors. The humans have mastered dark energy weapons beyond our understanding." The alien commander's voice shook with fear. "We were wrong about their technological level. They are not primitive. They are beyond our comprehension." That's when Tommy's mother noticed her son and his friends trying to slip quietly out of the command center's back door. "Tommy," she called out, "what do you know about this?" The room fell silent as Tommy and his small group shuffled forward. They looked dirty and tired, their clothes dusty from crawling through maintenance tunnels, but their eyes sparkled with pride. "Well," Tommy began, holding up his father's old radio, "we kind of noticed that the aliens were afraid of the dark." Over the next hour, the children explained everything. They showed the colony leaders their map of the tunnel system, demonstrated their simple tricks with the lights and sounds, and played back the radio recordings they'd collected. With each revelation, the adults' expressions changed from disbelief to amazement. "You mean to tell me," Colonel Peters said slowly, "that 6 kids with some maintenance tools and an old radio just drove off the most powerful alien army we've ever encountered?" "7 kids," came a voice from the door. It was Bill, the quiet boy from Tommy's class, who had been controlling the colony's garbage disposal systems. "The grinding noises from the recycling units were my idea." The colony leadership looked at each other, then back at the children. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Tommy's father started laughing. Not a mocking laugh, but one full of pride and joy. "Don't you see?" he said to the other adults. "This is perfect. The aliens thought they knew everything about us. They measured our weapons, our defenses, our technology. But they never thought to measure our courage, especially the courage of our children. Through the command center's windows, they could see the last alien ships disappearing into Haven's purple sky. The mighty stellar empire, with all its advanced technology and powerful weapons, had been defeated not by force, but by the simple bravery of children who had never learned to fear the dark. "We should be proud," Governor Wilson announced to the room. "Not just of our victory, but of what it represents. These children showed us something important today. That true strength isn't about size or weapons. It's about understanding, creativity, and courage." Tommy looked at his friends, seeing the same tired but happy expressions on all their faces. They had saved their home not by being stronger or more advanced than the aliens, but by being braver in the face of darkness, both literal and figurative. The colony's communication system suddenly lit up with messages from other human settlements. Word of Haven's victory was spreading, and with it, a new understanding of human capability. The aliens had come expecting to find primitive beings worthy only of conquest. Instead, they had discovered that even the youngest humans could show extraordinary courage when defending their home. 3 months after the Stellar Empire's retreat from Haven Colony, Tommy sat in his favorite spot in the old observation tower, watching 3 suns set over a distant planet. But this time, he wasn't on Haven. He was visiting the alien homeworld itself, along with his parents and friends who had helped save their colony. The Stellar Empire had sent a diplomatic mission to Haven just 2 weeks after their failed invasion. This time, instead of demands for surrender, they'd brought an unusual request. They wanted to learn from humans, especially their children, about how to overcome fear of darkness. "It's beautiful here," Amy said, looking at the endless light from the 3 suns. "But I can see why they were so afraid of shadows. They never had a chance to learn about darkness the way we did." Tommy nodded, remembering the conversation he'd had with the alien leader earlier that day. The tall, silver-skinned being had explained how their species had evolved under constant light, making darkness seem unnatural and frightening to them. Their fear had limited their ability to explore space, making them aggressive toward other species out of their own insecurity. "You taught us something valuable," the alien leader had said, their 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "True strength isn't about having the biggest weapons or the most powerful ships. It's about facing your fears and understanding those who are different from you." The diplomatic mission had turned into something much bigger. Haven Colony was now the center of a new cultural exchange program. Alien children were coming to learn how to handle darkness, while human children taught them games like hide and seek that made the dark feel fun instead of frightening. "Look at that," Jack pointed through the window at a group of alien and human children playing in one of the special shadow training rooms. The alien kids still jumped at sudden darkness, but they were learning to laugh instead of run away. Tommy pulled out his father's old radio, now modified with both human and alien technology, and listened to the chatter between ships in orbit. Instead of battle plans and invasion strategies, he heard trading agreements and cultural exchange schedules. "You know what's funny?" Tommy said to his friends. "They thought they were so much better than us because they were bigger and had better technology. But in the end, what made the difference was something you can't measure: courage." The Stellar Empire had completely changed their assessment of humanity. Their official reports now described humans as masters of environmental adaptation and possessing remarkable psychological resilience. Tommy had laughed when he first heard these descriptions. It was a fancy way of saying humans weren't afraid of the dark. As evening approached on the alien world, bringing the rare moment when 2 of their suns set simultaneously, Tommy watched the alien children practicing their darkness training. They were learning to walk confidently in low light, to understand that shadows were natural and not something to fear. "Sometimes," Tommy's father said, joining them at the window, "the bravest thing isn't fighting your enemies. It's helping them overcome their fears." Governor Wilson had been right about their victory representing something important. The story of how Haven's children defeated the Stellar Empire's army had spread across human space, but it wasn't celebrated as a story of warfare. Instead, it had become a tale about understanding, courage, and the wisdom that sometimes came from the most unexpected places. As the second sun set, leaving just one still lighting the alien sky, Tommy smiled. The universe was full of darkness and light, fear and courage, misunderstandings, and moments of clarity. The real victory hadn't been driving away the alien army. It had been showing them that their fears could be overcome, that darkness could be faced, and that sometimes the smallest humans could teach the biggest lessons.